Big Mike is asking which country in Africa will become the first African world power in the future? Ghana, Ethiopia, Egypt. My answer is none. What about you?
Definitely not Egypt. They're constantly begging for
Yeah,
funds to fund their country. So no.
no, none. South Africa had the potential. You know, South Africa used to build war helicopters
Yeah.
before the ANC came and screwed it up. You know, it's a lot to say about blacks managing shit, bro. Like the ANC have single-handedly disgraced all black people around the world with how they've mismanaged South Africa. It's horrible, bro.
Well,
Like,
yeah, they took it upon themselves to legalize LGBT without the response of the voters in the
yep.
country.
They
They
currently have a 60% youth unemployment rate in South Africa. 60.
yeah.
6 out of 10 men are not working. Like have no money coming in. And then they also have DEI the other way. So because of how they've set it up, it's no longer a meritocracy. The, you know what I mean by that, right? It's no longer a meritocracy. Like you're
No,
talking
go ahead.
about, if you want to see the effects of DEI, if it got carried out all the way in America, the American one wouldn't have been that uh, painfully excruciating like the South African model, because in the American one, the diversity also included generally all minorities, right? So you'd have Indians taking a quota, including even white women taking a quota, right? And then it wasn't there. If it's even a reflection of the population, a reflection of a minority group is if you have 100 employees, then you only are required to have 15%, 15% minority. Okay, 15% minority, if you're hiring the best of the minorities, is not enough to screw up. Like meritocracy still kind of covers up for it a little bit. That was the idea behind it. In the South African sense, the the white South Africans are only 15% of the population, actually 8% now. So that would mean that only 8% of whites of your workforce would be whites. And since let's leading up to apartheid, they were the most educated class with the most experience, and the wealth surrounded them. I'm not justifying apartheid here, but you bring all these black guys to run state-run organizations like ESCOM, then you send the white people home. It's essentially what they did. Like they literally sent them home. Like there, it's a quota. Like you have to meet that quota, which means 80% of your workforce has to be black South Africans. 80%, bro. So they went in there. This is after Thabo Mbeki. So Thabo Mbeki held on to it. This started with Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma comes in, starts with this radical socialist Russian trained policies, and then it pushes white people into poverty. Some of the poorest people in South Africa today are white people. People don't even know that. The Africans are very poor people nowadays.
All right. Basically, what happened is there was a white settlement in town where we squatted illegally. It was by a dam and sort of a park for kids and things, and it used to be a caravan park. And what the government had to do is because they wanted to refurbish the place, so through the court they moved us here to this settlement. Yeah, and they built us shacks. Okay, obviously we've built on and made differences and improvements to where we can. A lot of people move this side. Okay, some people due to alcoholism and addiction. Some people most people due to unemployment, which is a major problem. I mean, we struggle to find work. It's not easy. I mean, I've got quite a few qualifications and I can't get work. It's not easy. So,
And do you feel like now the government is now maybe discriminating against whites and not really giving them the same opportunities that you guys once had, maybe during the apartheid eras?
I think so. I think they're taking like sort of the black economic empowerment. I think they're taking it a bit too far because now white people, it's like sort of in reverse. White people can almost not even get a job. You see.
I see. That makes sense.
Where we used to be the right color, now we're the wrong color. You know, it's sort of like just sort of flipped.
Flip. Yeah. I see.
And but yeah, push hard, try hard. It's not easy. It's really not easy here. We do struggle quite a bit.
Pushes them into slums, really, like literally ghettos, white ghettos right now in South Africa. And what happened is that ESCOM, that was responsible for providing electricity in South Africa, now can't even provide electricity anymore. During apartheid, South Africa used to export electricity to Namibia and Botswana and Mozambique. Now they are importing electricity and they're doing something called load shedding, which is you get power for a few hours a day. In
Right.
South Africa, the one country that I think had the chance to make this a possibility, decided to do reverse racism instead of doing a more inclusive society like Mandela was envisioning, a rainbow nation where they heal their wounds and they come together as a collective to build one nation. Maybe model it after the United States, where you have a coalition of multiple races. It's not perfect, but at least uh, they were both contributing to a greater goal, which would have helped the entire population. Because now that racist apartheid regime was no longer in place, blacks had their freedom. Um, and maybe you could make a case for like reconciliation is probably what they're saying, like reparations, right?
Hmm.
Reparations should come maybe in monetary form, not you go sit out a job because uh, we're supposed to put a black person in, even though you're South African. And now you have all these large groups right outside of Pretoria. There's large groups of white South Africans that are completely have no future. Their future is completely shut out. It doesn't matter how much education you earn, you will not be placed in those organizations. And the rules were for companies that had more than 50 employees. Cyril Ramaphosa, who is now in charge, is making a push, or I don't know if he's done that already. He's making a push to now make this permanent, bro, for all organizations. It doesn't matter how big or small your company is. You have your working class should be representative of the racial makeup of that country. Okay. And bro, right now the only thing South Africa has that works for it, it's the infrastructure. And that is also crumbling, bro.
Right.
The,
If
the
you
road
don't maintain it, it's gonna
yeah, the
be gone up in the.
railways are no longer working. South Africa has a better rail network than the United States in terms of its connectivity and its accuracy. People don't even know that. Had a much better railway system. Like beautiful, bro. Like I've never seen a country that uniquely naturally beautiful. Like if you do a countryside drive outside of any of the major cities in South Africa, you think that if they're gonna make heaven on earth, it's gonna be in South Africa in terms of the landscape, the vibrance, the culture, the music, bro. Everything is like it would be the ideal perfect nation, but it's not because it's got a lot of crime. When you have 60% of your population unemployed, that is a recipe for disaster, right? That's crime, which is why it's so dangerous.
Mhm.
It's become like bro. There's videos on YouTube where people are reporting the news and they're pointing guns at them to rob them live on television, bro.
I believe it. You remember I was gonna have you hook up with Traveltainment when you went to Zambia?
Hmm.
Yeah, me and him were talking a few years back, and, he was telling me that he's on his way back to Zambia, and I think it was close to the border. He was at a filling station, went to get something to eat inside, sit back in his truck, getting ready to leave, I guess. A couple guys came up with guns and robbed him of everything. I think at the time, I can't remember if he's talking about he's working for himself or he was just buying for a company that he worked for. He was going to distribute the products, but he had whatever he was buying there wholesale to send back to Zambia. And he got robbed of everything, the truck, everything.
Bro, it's become a very dangerous place. Even like for regular folks, just walking around, right? You need People buy private security now in South Africa just to live.
Yeah.
And that freedom came at a price. And unfortunately, their new leadership, which, like I said, this is a shame to all Black people. When you look at this, you're like, geez, we can't manage shit, because South Africa is a prime example of when people say we can't manage shit, they show me something, right? Do something for me to say, these guys can do something. Okay, I give Mandela credit. He did for the first 4 years. But a lot of people are also saying that was due to the effects of what had already been built. It was too early to see the failure. Thabo Mbeki comes in and keeps it pretty standard. And then they bring that nationalist, Jacob Zuma, or socialist. He starts implementing what they call state capture, where you take over the state. You literally take over all state institutions. He puts in all his loyalists there. They are all Soviet trained in a way. And they start implementing these reverse racism policies to push white people out, even if they were competent, even if they were good at it. I'm not saying they were all the best workers were white, no. But you don't just send people to generate electricity when you've not given them the education and the skills to do that. Just because you're trying to fill a racial quota, they did that. And even when the power was going out, they started going out and buying generators and solar panels and blaming it on population expansion. Even though South Africa has only grown only a few percentage, because the white population has actually diminished and over 300,000 people have fled the country. So it's not growing as fast. It's only growing because of immigration from Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe tried that model and it failed. So Mugabe forced the white farmers. See, Zambia is taking them now. Zambia is open business for white farmers now.
Yeah, I read that.
And look at what has happened to Zambia. They had a food crisis. So it wasn't a shortage that creates hunger. Around COVID, there was a bit of a shortage. They blamed it on climate change and the rain patterns not being studied. So they opened a ministry called the Ministry of Green Economy, which is separate from the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Green Economy said Zambia was losing however many trees per day. So they came up with programs to replant, like reforest Zambia, right? A reforestation project. And they empowered local communities to be part of it. And that worked out pretty good. Then with the farmers leaving southern, like Zimbabwe, to come up north into Zambia, the Zambian government, I mean, they came and bought their own lands to do farming, but the Zambian government opened up their markets to these guys. And now, within the last 3 years, Zambia is now exporting food to the DRC. They didn't even have enough to feed themselves. Only 2 years ago, they couldn't feed themselves totally. Now they're exporting their primary food, because Zambians eat a lot of cornmeal. Like corn is like, woo, it's like McDonald's over there, right?
Yeah.
Now they're exporting corn to Congo and to all these other African countries, because they have a surplus. And this surplus is because all these white farmers are leaving left Zimbabwe to come make home in Zambia, which is an open market. And I see the same happening in South Africa, that most South African whites may have to figure out a way to work with the Zambian government to try to come into Zambia and do business in Zambia, because Zambia is a racially tolerant country. It's probably the best in the world in terms of racial tolerance. When you go to the mall, and this is my own statistic, right? You go to the malls in Zambia, you see every race, every religion, people wearing hijab, some not wearing hijab, and nobody even stares at you. Nobody looks at you. Everybody has a friend of a different race within Zambian society. And they've done that beautifully. You know what? There was a guy called Guy Scott. You should Google him and look him up. I'll put him in the
Yeah,
chat.
yeah. I know Guy Scott, and I also did on my other channel, This is Africa, I did a interview of Traveltainment, and we brought up Guy Scott because Guy Scott to me was very interesting.
Yep.
And at the time when he was vice president, um, he knew that he could never actually be president unless the president died, and he had to turn over power within 90 days, and that's exactly what he did when that happened.
Yep.
Because his generation being born in Zambia, he wasn't eligible for presidency. But if his son was to become president, then he was like the next generation that was legally able to do that. Now, with the
Right.
guy Scott, I found to be a very interesting person because he's somebody that always seemed to abide by the rule of law in the country.
Yeah.
And then at the time he was president, there was a lot of Americans, again, not knowing anything about Africa, not knowing anything about the world, was complaining about why'd you let that white man take over your country? You know,
Exactly.
and I don't know if you remember those videos, but it was like a big thing back then.
Yep. They made a big deal about it without understanding Zambian society and Zambian culture. And this guy was born in Zambia. Literally lived and he was a very good vice president. And the people loved him. And like the Zambians didn't see race in him. And if it wasn't for constitutional complexities and a strong opposition who Edgar Lungu, who became a pretty decent president, not the best but decent.
Mhm.
Zambians till this very day say that one of their biggest missed opportunities was not letting Guy Scott lead them through past that transition. Because it instilled a lot of confidence in Zambia that if an African nation can do this, then it's really open for business. This is one of the things that makes me very high and hopeful about Zambia as a whole that I couldn't say for other places. Bro, I'm not saying this, it's not even cap. It is one of the most racially tolerant societies. Even though the blacks are the majority, they don't flex their majority on the other people.
That's cool.
They don't. You can go to a nightclub in Lusaka. I just saw a thing on Facebook, a nightclub in Lusaka that was probably 80% white people, but they were all tourists. So if you look at it, you might think, oh, they just took over a nightclub and they don't allow blacks in there. There were some blacks in there too, but the guys that were dancing crazy overwhelmingly there, they were just tourists having a good time. And I think they may have traveled as a group. So if you look at it from the outside, you might think, oh, these guys, maybe they revere white people, or maybe they do this, or they don't, or they can't take charge. And the Zambians are saying, no, we don't care. These guys are also Zambians. Like my wife will literally throw a fit if you talk to um, a different race Zambian. Like when they do their swimming, a lot of their swimmers are like Caucasians and Indians and other people, non black Zambians. And if you make any comment to make it sound like they are not really Zambians, she takes very deep offense to that. And if you're from other parts of Africa, you won't understand it. You might think, oh, why? And if you're definitely American, you might think these Africans are idiots and that they are worshiping a white guy. But one thing that they fail to understand is that Kenneth Kaunda, who fought for Zambia's independence, had a phrase that stuck in the minds of Zambians to this very day, which is also a reason why they don't have the effects of tribalism like we do in West Africa. They have a little bit of it, but not a big deal. He coined a phrase called "One Zambia, One Nation,"
I remember that.
and he raised a whole generation of Zambians, 30 years, 40 years in, to believe in themselves as one nation first, right? And they say that every day to this very day. You go to Zambia right now, when the president starts a speech, like in the US, where you say, God bless America to end the speech,
Right.
the Zambian president always ends with one Zambia, one nation.